Hello YouTube, Matt the Goblin Piper here. As promised, here to continue the strange stories of Goblin Piper. First of all, smoking some Bob's Chocolate Flake and my Rattray's Monarch. I opened one of these, so this is my first time ever smoking Bob's. And I opened this tin, and it was a little dry. And I had heard word that Gawith and Hogarth would no longer be sealing their tins. And what I've heard, I don't know if they ever did. But anyways, I had two, so I just jarred them both just to be safe. The other one had some real good moisture in it, but better safe than sorry. So anywho, the first tale actually should have been in the other video because it's from the same house that we lived in the Dalles, Oregon in '95. So this house had a full basement, usual musty, dusty basement. Had a really weird layout. It had a room that had an exterior door with window panes in it, and then there was a half wall with a with like a counter on it, and then on the other side there was just racks inside of it, like shelving and all that stuff. I think it had been somebody's little workshop at one point in time. And then over in the opposite corner, there was like a little room made out of plumber's block, kind of. It was like part plumber's block, part supporting foundational concrete for the upstairs, that had a drain in the middle of the floor. Now, as a kid, I never thought about, in case, there's flooding or rainwater or whatever, it needs somewhere to go. So I assume it's an old floor drain. But it had a little sink in it, and it was real weird. And there was like 50-gallon black bags full of something that we didn't bring with us when we moved in. Nobody ever touched them. They just sat in a corner somewhere. Pretty spooky. We loved to go down there though and freak ourselves out. But also down the basement was all the boxes from when we had moved. So we would take all the boxes, put them together, one long tunnel, and we'd crawl around in there like mole people, and have a good time. One day we were down there fooling around, and we heard a tap, tap, tap on top of the box right above our heads. And of course we knew that Mom hadn't come down into the basement, since she was the only other one home, and you would be able to hear her coming down the stairs because they were old, creaky basement stairs. So of course, spooked, we burst out of there, and looked around. Nobody. Didn't see nothing. Nothing ever came of it. But we stopped playing in the basement for a while after that one. Again, it's only in 3rd grade. My sister was in 2nd grade. We weren't particularly brave about things like that. Not at that time. Because at that time, Goosebumps was in its heyday. And as a avid reader and watcher of the TV program, I was constantly on edge. So maybe it was just our overactive imaginations. But it's still a fond little memory that I have. Okay. So the next one comes from quite a few years down the road. I think I was 15 at the time. And it was a Saturday. Had to get up early and go into work. And got up, went to go to the bathroom. Bathroom door was closed, and it sounded like the faucet was running. So I thought, oh, Dad must be up, you know. So I kind of stood there. The water turned off. Then I didn't hear anything. So I, like, Dad, you all right? Knocked on the door. I'll be out in a minute. I'm sitting there, you know, wiping sleep from my eyes, not thinking much about it. And then I realized I was home alone. My parents had taken my two younger sisters on a trip to Arizona, and I was left home because I had a job, and there was nobody else in the house. So that kind of woke me up, right? Like a straight shot of espresso right into the main artery. And of course, I fling the door open. Nobody in there. So, and there was one window in there, and it was probably just a standard, maybe 1.5 by 1.5 square window that would only open up for about the first 6 inches, that had stoppers, so you couldn't open it up all the way. And the voice that I heard was a full-grown male, and unless you were a little person with a very deep voice, not a chance you could have escaped. And I heard nothing alluding to the fact that somebody was trying to crawl out the window. So, freaked me out, of course. I hurried up and got dressed and hopped in my car and went to my grandma's and hung out with her until I had to go to work. And I told her about it, and she was very supportive about it. And she had some interesting stories of her own, and long tradition of ghosts and spook stories passed down in our family, and maybe I'll share those with you guys at some point. But nothing too crazy, you know, nothing concrete, of course. I personally never saw an apparition. I've occasionally, I think the closest thing, you know, things that kind of make you stop and wonder, you know, every once in a while you'll smell something that reminds you of a relative that's passed away, and especially in my house, and these relatives that have passed away, I've never been there. I don't believe I have anything of theirs in the house that would be holding any of that scent, but every once in a while I'll smell something that reminds me of my grandma, and I'll smell cigarette smoke in the house, which reminds me of my grandpa. So, you know, things like that. Nothing terrifying, nothing scary, nothing concrete. Could have been anything. Could have been still half asleep. Could have been sleepwalking. You just never know. And probably never will. And maybe we're not supposed to. But they sure do make fun tales to tell. There was something else that I was going to talk about. One last thing I had, and I love listening to other people's stories about, you know, the dreams that they have, especially the really weird ones. And I had this dream the night that my dad's mom passed away, and I was that somewhere in between, and and of course my eyes were closed, but I know I wasn't fully asleep because I remember it so vividly. With my eyes closed, like just a picture in my brain, I saw her standing, and she was holding a specific flower, and I don't remember what the flower was, but I just decided that, you know, when it came to planning the service, I would try and make sure that those flowers were present. I don't know if those were her favorite flowers or not. She wasn't really into flowers. She wasn't a gardener. I never heard her tell me anything about flowers, that, you know, ones that she preferred or whatnot. But you know, maybe that was just her saying goodbye, or maybe because, you know, my grandmother was on my mind at the time. My brain just did a brain thing, and that was that. But I am going to continue smoking this Bob's Chocolate Flake. Actually, I'm probably going to spend more time trying to keep it lit. I still struggle a little bit with flakes. This came as a very rough flake. I would say it was almost, I want to say somebody took it and they thrashed it. So it's not fully rubbed out. It's still got full length pieces, but it's very stringy and broken apart, and they were all kind of bent over each other. You know, like they took a wad of it and shoved it in the tin, which is fine because I don't fold and stuff. I haven't quite figured that out yet. But I prefer to rub them out anyways. So I did a little bit more of that. This is the one that was a little bit drier. So maybe it needed a little bit more drying time. But I don't mind. It's pretty good. You know, you occasionally get that whiff of cocoa, which is really pleasant. This is just first quarter of the bowl. Haven't really got any hint of that Kentucky, but there might not be very much in there. But what I am getting is the Virginias. It's very, I'd say Virginia forward. And I think most of you have probably had this because over the years I've seen tons of videos about, you know, people doing reviews on it and just talking about it in general, and it seems to be a pretty common ground for people, both who like aromatics and those that don't. I don't know if there's many people that dislike it. I'm sure there are some, but I think I'm gonna have to sit with this one a little bit longer, kind of get a feel for it. But anyways, those are the stories. I hope you guys have a good evening and a good morning. I will talk to you guys next time.